What if some mental health conditions aren't just chemical imbalances, but metabolic disorders of the brain? There's growing research suggesting the ketogenic diet may help some people with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and even schizophrenia. But is it hype? Or is it the future of psychiatry? Hi, I'm Lori Westmiller, a practicing mental health therapist with nearly 30 years of experience supporting individuals and families through complex mental health challenges. On this channel, I focus on helping women understand the neurological, hormonal, and metabolic layers of midlife mental health. To understand why keto is even a part of this conversation, we need to start with the story we've been told about mental illness for decades. For years, we were taught that depression and other mental illnesses were caused by chemical imbalances, mainly serotonin. Many people were told their brain was simply low in serotonin, and that medication alone was the solution. And for some individuals, medication absolutely helps. But over time, researchers began to question whether that explanation was too simple. Because when you look at the data, mental health doesn't map neatly into one transmitter. People with similar serotonin levels can have very different symptoms, and antidepressants don't work the same for everyone. That's when the conversation began to shift. Mental health is far more complex than one chemical. It involves inflammation, hormones, stress response, mitochondrial health, and how the brain uses energy. And that's where this conversation about metabolism begins. Your brain makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it uses about 20% of your energy. That's a massive demand. It means your brain is constantly consuming fuel just to regulate mood, memory, focus, and emotional stability. If brain cells aren't getting steady, usable energy, symptoms can show up as brain fog, mood swings, anxiety, depression, irritability, even psychosis in extreme cases. Emerging research suggests that in some people, mental illness may involve disruptions in how the brain processes glucose, insulin resistance within the brain, or mitochondrial dysfunction, meaning the cells responsible for producing energy aren't working efficiently. That doesn't mean it's all blood sugar, but it does mean the brain's energy system plays a role in how we feel. And when energy becomes unstable, symptoms often follow. This brings us to something called metabolic psychiatry. Chris Palmer, a Harvard psychiatrist, has been researching the connection between metabolism and serious mental illness. In his book, Brain Energy, he proposes that many mental health disorders may share underlying metabolic dysfunction in the brain. The ketogenic diet, originally developed to treat epilepsy, shifts the brain's fuel source from glucose to ketones. Ketones may support mitochondrial function, reduce inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, and calm overstimulation in the brain. Some case studies and small clinical trials have shown improvements in bipolar, major depression, and even schizophrenia symptoms when keto is used under medical supervision. These studies are small and not yet definitive, but they're compelling enough that researchers are paying serious attention, and this is a growing area of research, but the science is still developing. Now, let's bring this into midlife, because this is where it gets very relevant. In perimenopause and menopause, estrogen drops, insulin sensitivity can shift, inflammation may increase, stress accumulates, sleep changes. Estrogen plays a role in glucose metabolism and brain energy use. So when estrogen declines, some women experience brain fog, mood instability, new onset anxiety, worsening depression. Blood sugar swings can absolutely amplify anxiety. When glucose spikes and crashes, cortisol rises. And physiologically, that feels like panic. For some women, stabilizing blood sugar alone can dramatically reduce anxiety symptoms, not because they weren't really anxious, but because the nervous system was metabolically stressed. That's a very different framework. So, is keto a cure? No, and it's important to say that clearly. The ketogenic diet is not a replacement for therapy. It's not a replacement for medication without medical supervision, and it is not appropriate for everyone. It can be risky for people with a history of eating disorders, those who are underweight, individuals on certain psychiatric medications, anyone making abrupt dietary changes without guidance. Mental health treatment should always be individualized, but food is not neutral, and the brain is not separate from the body. I don't believe the therapeutic use of a ketogenic diet is hype. I believe it's a growing area of legitimate research that deserves thoughtful attention. And I'll share something personal here. There was a period when my anxiety was at its worst, and I experimented with a ketogenic approach myself. For me, stabilizing blood sugar made a noticeable difference. Not because it cured anxiety, but because it helped stabilize what was happening in my body. That experience is part of why I pay attention to this research. For some people, especially those with treatment-resistant depression, bipolar, or significant metabolic dysfunction, addressing metabolic health may be a helpful addition to therapy and medication. For others, it might not be the right fit. But what I appreciate about the medical ketogenic diet for reducing mental health is this. It moves us away from shame, away from what's wrong with you, and toward what does your brain need? That's a very different question. Mental health is layered. It's not just one chemical. It's not just one diagnosis. And it's rarely just one solution. For some people, looking at metabolism opens a door that hasn't been explored yet. For others, it may not change much at all. But asking, what does my brain need, instead of what's wrong with me, is a powerful shift. If this perspective resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to explore how this connects specifically to anxiety or bipolar disorder, let me know. We can go deeper. If metabolism affects brain energy, what happens when that energy system gets overloaded, especially in midlife, when hormones and blood sugar are already shifting? That's often where panic enters the picture. In my next video, I break down the hidden patterns behind panic attacks and why anxiety can escalate so quickly in midlife. Start here next. And if you're interested in exploring the neurological, hormonal, and metabolic layers of midlife mental health, make sure you're subscribed, because that is exactly what we unpack here.